Okay, so what we had here was this was again a very rural environment. I think it was a Monday morning, and about 8:30 in the morning, this truck hit a slick spot on the road and went in to the median. So the initial officer on scene, the on-scene report was that they had a tanker off the road on its side in the median. The on-scene officer saw the placards and realized he had hazardous material incident on his hands. And so what he did was he went ahead and called dispatch and reported that he did have a hazardous material on the scene. The driver of the vehicle within the tractor was actually self-extricated. So that kind of took care of the life safety issue, and there weren't any other vehicles involved. So nobody else was injured or had been involved in this accident. The tank was not leaking. So that was one of the things they were able to report, was there was some seepage that was occurring around the valving, which was on the top of the tank. The other thing was that they weren't exactly sure what they had in here. They were pretty sure that they had some kind of an alcohol, but they weren't exactly sure what they had, and that kind of played into the whole event too. So sort of our on-scene report for this was that this was a tanker on its side. There did not appear to be any additional injuries other than a driver who had self-extricated. It was actually standing next to the tractor when they got there. And then they were actually able to determine that they did have indeed a situation that was a hazardous material response. And we were able to, as you'll see in the exercise when we get to it, the Montgomery County Hazmat team, Montgomery Christian County Hazmat team, and Springfield Hazmat team went to the scene. All right. So let's look at the second one. Maybe. Hey, Greg, why am I not advancing?
Hello?
Hello. I'm trying to get it to advance. It will not do it.
Okay.
Okay, can everybody see the bus wreck? Should be good to go on that.
I'm sorry?
Okay, what we want to do is we want to do an on-scene report on this one, if you could. Give you a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll go over that. Okay, this was a bus accident that actually occurred south of a little town called Fillmore, Illinois, which is again in Montgomery County. And the initial call came in that this was a bus that had went off the side of the road. There were 17 individuals in this bus. Of course, you wouldn't know that just from seeing it, but there were 17 individuals in the bus that actually rolled off the side. It rolled completely once. If you think of it leaving the road, what you see with this bus is it actually made a complete 360 revolution and landed on its side. The initial report came in from a cell phone call saying that there were people that were trapped in the bus and that some of the victims were able to self-extricate and that we had injuries. And so again, 911 dispatching fire and ambulance to the scene, the initial commander on scene when he got there saw this situation and actually saw that the children were self-extricating from the bus. He had a hard time getting a handle on exactly how many students were in this bus because the driver was one of the ones that was injured. So through working through him and calling back to the school district, they were actually able to determine the number of students that were on that bus. So we had injuries. We had an accident. There was no fuel spill from this bus when it went down. But what you had was a situation where you had extrication that was needed. So the initial incident commander, when they got there, called for additional ambulances, called for 2 additional rescue squads, and began to set up command. And one of the first things they tried to do was to get somebody in the bus to do accountability check. And the second thing was to try to begin treating those that had gotten out of the bus. This involved, by the time it was all said and done, I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 ambulances there, 2 air ambulances, and 3 fire departments arrived on the scene. So again, if you're the incident commander and you're taking a look at this, if you're thinking life safety, incident stabilization, and property environmental conservation, the number one thing that played into this on-scene report was life safety. That was a big deal throughout the whole event, and it continued to be a big deal until about 40 minutes into the whole event when we finally got the last patient transport. So again, using those things of life safety, incident stabilization, and property environmental conservation, this one played into a lot on the life safety side. Okay, for some of you folks in Northern Illinois, this is the Utica tornado that happened several years ago. So again, I'll give you a couple minutes to kind of take a look at it and decide what your on-scene report is and what you would be looking at from the perspective of the incident commander. Okay, this one's kind of like the last one. 17. So again, from like sort of with the perspective of the last one, what we had here was a situation where life safety played heavily into this. Incident commanders on the scene. They had multiple entrapments. They had multiple injuries. They had to ensure that search and rescue was carried out, that EMS was able to be provided for. And so the initial incident commander on the scene, who actually was one of the neighboring fire chiefs because the fire department actually got knocked out in this tornado, actually had to get on the scene and start looking really hard at that first ICS goal, life safety. What am I going to do for life safety? How am I going to extricate these people? Where's the nearest hospital? Where am I going to get them to? What EMS care am I going to provide? The number of resources on scene, including several technical rescue teams to get involved with actually going in and doing extrication. Several ambulances called to the scene initially, and then they kind of had to start looking at secondary hazards. Now, one of the things in life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation is that we always get this situation where we're playing to as an incident commander. What are some of the issues with secondary hazards? What am I going to be playing into? What am I going to be putting my people into? Are these power lines, are they down? Are they live? Do I have gas leaks? Is there a potential for fire? So a lot of times when we're looking at things that can occur from secondary hazards, that was the big issue, as it is in all tornadoes. What were some of the secondary hazards? If you look at the last 2 scenarios we gave you, if you stop and think about the primary hazard with the hazmat, that was the fact that it might leak, and it didn't. If you look at the primary hazards from the bus accident, you had possible entrapment, unstable vehicles, those kind of things had to be dealt with. But this one, in terms of secondary hazards, that was the main thing that the incident commander had to be cognizant of. And how are they going to handle that situation? All right, move along here. Okay, let me back up just a second. That's easier done than said. If you've got any questions on any of the exercises, those were just designed to kind of get you thinking. We're not going to delve very deep into those exercises, for the simple fact of the matter is they were just trying to get you thinking. What as an instant commander, what am I looking at? What am I doing? What are some of the things that I'm going to be dealing with? Okay, all right. So when you're the fireground instant commander and you pull up on that scene, one of the things you have to do is you have to make a decision about what you want to do. And really, when we look at fireground incident management, we really kind of have three options that are available to us. And a lot of it depends on the structure that we pull up to and the fire condition that exists in that structure. Most of the time, when we get to a scene, whether we like it or not, or we say it or not, we go into investigation mode where we don't see obvious fire conditions. We don't see people exiting the building. We don't see a situation where we've got some kind of structural hazard. So a lot of time what we do is we go into investigation mode. The instant commanders at that time can assume command of that vehicle and can actually have the other officers and firefighters on that vehicle begin investigation. We do the same thing on a car accident. We do the same thing if we're dealing with some kind of a situation where we roll up on an unknown hazard. We can go in investigation mode. If you stop and think about that for a minute, investigation mode sounds pretty simple, but what we have to do is we have to make sure that there's nothing there on that scene that's going to cause us additional problems. So if we pull up an investigation mode and we hear a gas leak or we see there's some kind of secondary hazard, we kind of have to make a decision right off the bat rather than just go walking up to the house or the structure and kind of taking a look at what's going on. And investigation mode can be anything from a quick 2-minute investigation, last maybe 25 or 30 minutes, depending on the situation you're dealing with. All right, what's the next one? Well, it's fast attack mode. Obviously, we pull up, there's obvious fire conditions that exist, we go to fast attack mode. Sometimes on fast attack mode, the instant commander's got to become a responder because you just don't have enough people on an initial engine to actually do what needs to be done. And so that instant commander may go into fast attack mode and may call dispatch and say, you know, we're beginning an initial attack for knockdown or search or protect exposures or whatever we're doing, and that instant commander will become part of that response. The third mode we want to get to is command mode. So if the instant commander is involved in any of the first two modes, but they are doing something on the scene, we want to hurry up as quick as we can and get us to command mode. You hear a lot of these guys go out, they'll respond on the scene when they know another unit's coming with an officer or something. You'll hear them say, I'm passing command. What they're doing is they're passing command to that officer that's coming on the scene that can take over. But we really want to get to command mode as quick as we can, because what that does, a couple things to the instant commander. That lets the instant commander back off, kind of take a look at what's going on, and take a little time to make decisions. One of the things we always used to teach when we taught the ICS classes was that if you're an instant commander and you come up to a scene and you're in a situation where there's something has to be done immediately, the best view you have of that scene is when you get there. That's when you have the closest thing to a 180-degree view of that scene. As you start to make decisions on that scene, your focus will begin to narrow, because what's happening is you're investing your time and energy in actually going into starting to look at what you're going to do to make that situation better. We want command mode because we want you as the instant commander to be able to say, I am an instant commander and I have things to do as an instant commander, and I want to be able to back off and I want to be able to focus my energies on those things I need to do as an instant commander. So we want to hit command mode as fast as we can. Now, that doesn't just say that we just dump everything. If I got a guy going in the door with a hand line, I'm not going to say, well, you know what, good luck, I'm going to command mode. No, you have to do what you need to do to handle the initial attack or whatever you're going to do. But you try to get to command mode as quick as you possibly can, because that's actually, you get to a situation where you can start to make decisions. When no command mode exists on the scene, we have to go back to protocols. People will operate as they're trained with protocols and procedures. But what we want to be able to do as an instant commanders, we want to be able to evaluate that whole process and say, this is where I want to be. This is what I'm doing. And so we want to get to command mode as quick as we possibly can and be able to kind of back away from it, step back, and take a look at what's going on. We're in command mode. We have time to make decisions. We don't have to force decisions. We have time to look at accountability. We have time to decide what secondary resources we need. We have time to kind of take a look and say, how big is this event going to get? And what resources do I not have at the scene am I going to need? So that's kind of why we want to go to command mode as quick as we possibly can. Firefighters that have been in the business will tell you there's times you just can't do it. You just have to respond. You just have to do something. If it's nothing more than you got to jump up and run the truck, that's fine. But you want to try to get to command mode as quick as you possibly can, because when you do that, you're giving yourself the opportunity to actually serve as an instant commander and make intelligent decisions that are going to save people's lives and actually get the job done efficiently and effectively. Okay. Now, why did that pop up? This is not the end of the program, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure why that popped up. Okay, now we're back on track. Yeah, that was a fast class, wasn't it? Jimmy, Chris, you guys did a great job. Okay, so the other thing we want to take a look at, which is going to be some of the core elements of what we're doing in this class, is we want to take a look at strategic and tactical, okay? Because that is going to play a lot into our decisions as an instant commander. We try to get ourselves to a strategic level because what we want to do there is we want to be able to make overarching decisions that allow us to influence what's going on the fire ground or in any large incident, and we want to be able to try to take a sort of a overarching look at that. We always talk about in ICS, we talk about the 10,000 foot level. That's where we want to be with that strategic level. The tactical level is the operations level. That's where you're actually doing things. I'm going to show you a slide here in just a minute. I think we'll kind of tie a lot of that together for you. But we look at other disciplines and we say, well, these other disciplines, that's one of the things that we have to take a look at because they can use the same idea, all right? The strategic level we used for that tanker rollover on the interstate was the same kind of strategic response we would use for a large structure fire or if we had some kind of a situation where we got a tornado going through or whatever. We want to achieve that strategic level. It's not easy. Hitting that strategic level and making those decisions, that's not an easy thing for a couple reasons. Number one, you've got to have enough people there at the scene to be able to support those decision makings. And the second thing is we don't train on that from the first day we go to work. We train on the tactical and task level. The first day you're on the scene or on the job, you're not taught how to be an operations person. You're not taught how to be an instant commander. You're taught how to do what you have to do to work with the equipment that you get and other personnel on the scene. You're taught at the task level. Now, most of us in our career move to the tactical level where we actually start looking at the things that we can actually do to influence a scene from the tactical level. But the tactical level still is I have people and I have equipment and this is what I'm going to do with them. At the strategic level, what we really want to do is say, I have equipment and I have people, this is what I'm doing. I want to look ahead and say, how long am I going to be here and what am I going to have to do to support those people on the scene doing their job so that we can keep this process rolling efficiently and effectively until we're done. That's the strategic level. It is not easy to get to. It is not something that you just kind of step up and say, okay, I'm going to do strategy today, because you kind of really got to work your way through that process. If you took ICS classes, that was great. If you took fireground operations, whatever you took in the fire service, or as some of your command level classes, that's what they're trying to get you to do. They're trying to get you to achieve that strategic level. In the small towns, it is difficult to do because what you have to do is you kind of got to implement different procedures in there like mutual aid, and you have to have other officers come in to kind of help you do this stuff. So what you're really trying to do is you're trying to reach that level, okay? So that's the 3 levels. We're going to spend a lot of time the next 2 nights talking about strategic and tactical. We're not going to talk about task as much because that's kind of one of the things that you've done in your training up to the point where you've come to this class. We want to talk about those other 2 levels and how they work. Okay. All right. The other thing is benchmarks. Now, one of the things in Instant Commander, what you want to do is you want to be able to say, I'm going to go to a scene, and when I'm all done, the fire's out, nobody got hurt, none of the equipment got damaged. We're in a situation where everything is not normal, but there is no more damage being done. The problem is that how do we get there? And so one of the things that the fire services used, and again, my good friend Roger Lunt, when they went around and did fire ground management classes all over the state, this is one of the things that they really emphasized. There are 3 basic benchmarks here that we're going to talk about. And what you hear a lot of times in the fire services, people will actually use these. The first one's all clear. That means that we have put people in the structure, done a quick primary search, and the structure has no more individuals in it that would need to be rescued. So our primary search is complete of the entire area. The second thing is under control. In this case, the fire is contained and it's no longer spreading. That doesn't mean we're done because there's this wonderful thing in there called overhaul we haven't done yet. But we've got the fire under control, the spread's contained, we don't have extension, that's all done. But what we still have to do is we have to go through this process and work through overhaul, investigation, whatever we need to do. Loss stopped is the fire's out, we're not spraying water anymore, all overhaul operations are done. Excuse me, we're ready to put hose on the truck and go home. So these 3 simple little benchmarks, if we use them and we use them effectively and we communicate them effectively, gives everybody on the scene a real clear picture of exactly what it is we're doing. One of the things about being an instant commander, it's not just that you know what's going on, it's that everybody working with you on the scene knows what's going on. And so by using these little benchmarks and learning some techniques of things you can do, you can let everybody on the scene know what you know, which is important because that way everybody kind of got an idea of what's going on. So if we're not an all clear situation, if our primary search isn't complete, the people that are rolling up to that scene coming in as your mutual aid departments are thinking, I got to pack up, I got to be ready to go. We're going to have to go in and finish this primary search. Whereas if they hear all clear, they're thinking, well, you know, all I got to do is put the fire out. Now that, I'll tell you what, on a simple structure fire at a house, that's not a big deal. When you're going to a school where you've got multiple people in that school, all clear is a big deal because in the school planning we've done here in Central Illinois, people look at me as a fire chief and think that, you know, I make light of the situation. But my comment is if all the kids are out, all we got to do is put the fire out. And they look at me and say, well, that you still got a lot of work to do. Yeah, but if I don't have to go search through the whole school and try to find children who might be trapped in that school, my job has become considerably easy, as has all the mutual aid companies that responded. So when we hear that word all clear, we think, it's no big deal. If it's an office building, if it's a school, if it's a factory, all clear takes on a whole different approach. And it might be that you have to have a lot of other units helping you do that just to get that done. Under control. Okay, fire's under control. Again, single story, room and contents, no big deal. Inside of a school building where you got a wood frame, that could be a really big deal. So again, these benchmarks, like Instant Command, a small little task, or they might be something where you have to roll in a lot of resources and you really have to bring those resources to bear for you as an Instant Commander to actually get that job done. So these benchmarks are things that once we adopt them in the fire service and we learn how to use them, it tells everybody on that scene and the Instant Commander a lot about what we've got going on at that scene. It really makes life a lot simpler for us, and it's a really great communications tool. Okay, here's what I want to show you. If you think of strategy, what you think of is what do I want to do? I want to complete a primary search. I want to put the fire out. I want to contain the hazardous material spill. I want to get triage done of all the people in the bus. That is the what. That is actually, as an Instant Commander on the scene, that is what I want to have done. The how is where we get into resources. At the tactical level, we have to kind of decide, how am I going to support that strategy that incident commander's done? So if I say to you as an incident commander, I want to secure this area where this tornado is going through by 10 o'clock tonight. If you're the operations section chief, you got to sit there at the tactical level. You go, okay, now how am I going to block these intersections? What am I going to do to contain some of these secondary hazards? So you, as the operations section chief, start to look at, how am I going to do that? And finally, at the task level, that might be a situation where we say, we're going to use a squad car, or we're going to use a Jersey barrier, or we're going to use a dump truck, or we're going to use a pile of sand. So that's kind of where the task level comes in. The trick of it is, in large incidents, is to keep these things in perspective. And that's why we want incident commanders to step up to the scene and be incident commanders, no matter how big or small the incident is, because what we want to do is we want to try to build that strategic level as quickly as we possibly can, because that way, when we set strategy and we've developed objectives, which we're going to talk about tomorrow night, that gives the operations section chief and the people working with them the opportunity to take a look at these next two levels and say, how am I going to do it, with what resources, and then what techniques am I going to use when the resources get here? So that's kind of one of those things where we look at that. So if you think of the strategic level as the what, that's an all-encompassing strategy to go in and work on this incident and try to do what it is that we need to do to contain a spill, to stop the fire, to do what needs to be done. At the tactical and task level, that's kind of where we do it. Now, in Central Illinois, when you put this all in perspective, you don't really think of some incidents in Central Illinois as being something where this would really play into that. But we had an incident last fall where we had a really windy day. We had really dry conditions, and we had a field fire start. By the time it was all said and done, it had gone something like 6.8 miles and was over a mile wide. And I think we had something like 32 departments on the scene. We had a hard time, folks, getting to the strategic level because we weren't able to really get a perspective on how big this thing was going to be doing. So we kept calling resources, and the incident commander will tell you he had a tough time doing it, and I certainly can understand what he went through. But we operated mostly at the task level. What we were trying to do was get water on fire and stop the spread. But the problem is that we never really got a good handle on how fast it was moving and where it was going to go. So there were some touch and go situations with structure fires and whatnot that was really tough to do. Now you say, well, that was a situation that manifested itself out of the clear blue. I totally agree with you. It was a situation that was going to be very difficult to handle. I totally agree with you there. The only thing that we can do is we can take a look at that and learn from that event, so that if it ever happens again, we know how to get to the strategic level quicker than we did during the last one. We know how to know that we're going to have people getting ahead of it. We're going to have to get information back. We're going to have to make conscious decisions about where to send resources. We're going to have to get a handle on exactly how many people are there and what are we going to do with them. And that's one of the things we have to work on. And again, large structure fires, we're used to doing that. We have experience with that. Large field fires and, wildfires out of control in Central Illinois, that's not something we're used to dealing with. So again, it's a learning experience, and it's kind of one of those things that we're going to kind of have to take a look at. All right. So if you think of it, what's your strategic level? What's your tactical level? What's your tasks level? All right, and I'll do one for you. There's our school bus accident. So at the strategic level, what we want to do is we want to do our extrication. We want to account for, and we want to treat and transport all the injured to the hospitals while keeping emergency responders safe. That's the strategic level. That's the overarching level that says if we can achieve this, that's what we want to do. The tactical level involves vehicular stabilization, getting access, having triage and EMS capabilities available, securing the scene, starting an investigation. That's kind of one of the things we want to do at the tactical level. And at the task level is where we're saying who's actually going in the bus and how are we going to extricate these individuals that are there. So what you can see is, if you think of these in those three levels, it kind of maybe gives you a better idea of how this breakdown would occur and how you'd actually start taking a look at this. So when you think of the tanker, again, strategic level, We want to make sure we don't get any spills. We want to get everything out of the tanks. We want to make sure that we keep people from having secondary accidents. All those kind of things played into that. And then when you think of our tornado, then you're starting to look at how am I going to do a thorough investigation of the scene? How am I going to make sure nobody's in the buildings? All that kind of stuff plays into it at the strategic level. At the tactical level, it's exactly how can I do this safely for my responders? What streets can I use? How am I going to break this thing up? And Andy will talk about that tomorrow night a little bit. And then at the task level, it's what am I going to do to get to that injured individual who may be trapped under a piece of drywall? Okay. So I'm going to turn this over to Andy Goodall, who's going to cover the next set of slides.